We're now into the second week of June, and Elsie Stonehouse is still blooming, but the blooms are fading. A little bit of what I believe is botrytis fungus on the white sections of the petals and sepals, but still a pretty spectacular display. And I've always passed over these, but I might mention this is an epidendron or a cane orchid. And this comes from Cal Orchids. Jim and Laura Rose had a pretty extensive breeding program over a number of years. And let's see if we can focus in on this. This is Pacific Sizzle Senorita and Pacific Pepper Mulligans. So it's part of the Pacific series. And these range from yellows to purples to oranges and then bright reds. And pretty easy to grow. I took this plant outside last year and it really suffered by getting a little too much sun and not liking my hard well water, which has very, very high dissolved solids content. So bringing it back into the greenhouse and giving it better water and a little shadier conditions than bright summer sun, you can see the new growth is coming out much greener, much more succulent looking. And so I think it's going to do a lot better back in the greenhouse. It also doesn't like the cooler night temperatures that we have here even in the summertime. So temperatures at night of 50 and above seem to benefit it. Outdoors, the temperatures are in the mid 40s during a number of evenings. And again, I think that is part of the reason it did not do well outside last year. Okay, moving on, we have another Renathera blooming. And I'll put the name of this one in a title when I process the video. But Renatheras, for me, bloom pretty much throughout the year. This is Red Dragon, which had the spectacular red flowers in earlier videos. But I wanted to show you, it looks like we're going to get another bloom spike. And you can see, I think you can see, there's a little bit of a green nub coming out right there, and that will turn into a bloom spike in about 2 months. So that's what we look for in blooms developing on the Renathera Red Dragon. Oncidium Splinter continues to send up what's now about a 4.5 foot tall spike, and we're now starting to get some of the side branches. So I would estimate probably a month until we get some axilla flowers opening. And this is another very fragrant orchid that's in bloom now in early June. This is Prostheca lancifolia. And there are a number of prosthekias that have this kind of flower shape with the lip pointing up. This one, as I said, lancifolia, and it's growing in a nut basket with bark and perlite. You can see the new roots coming out, but a relatively fast grower, turns into a specimen plant in a matter of just a few years, covered in blooms, and as I said, very fragrant. So really nice, very unusual looking flower. And you can see again the pronounced upward facing lip, sometimes called the octopus orchid for the arrangement of the petals that drape down. And this is the standard color form. I think there's a variety called Green Hornet, which emphasizes the green coloration. And I mentioned Norman's orchids cross this with a dark colored orchid to get that purple color in the petals and sepals. And I'll just go back, you've seen this in the past, but just remind you what it looks like. Here is the Norman's orchids equivalent. And you can see the really nice effect of modifying by hybridizing and getting that purple coloration to also cover the sepals and the petals. And so this has 2 bloom spikes, and I really do like this color form quite a bit. I think Norman Fong has done a great job with this hybrid. And still on the brighter side of the greenhouse, this is Angrechium dideri. You can see the long nectary spur on this Madagascarian orchid. I'll give you the name here. Dideri. This comes from Diamond Orchids, Peter Lynn, down in Diamond Bar, California. And some of my other Angrechiums that bloom February, where my conditions were too cold, like Darwin's orchid, I had complete failure of the buds developing. So I've switched now to Angrechiums that set their blooms April, May, June, and here we are the middle of June, or early middle of June, and you can see buds develop nicely. My temperatures are warm enough to support bud growth, and just a spectacular orchid. It's also sometimes known as the knobby-rooted orchid. It's got some very odd and colorful white bumps on the roots. That's not a disease. That's actually what the roots look like. But just a real fun orchid, great to grow mounted or in a pot. And again, that comes from Diamond Orchids, Peter Lynn in the Los Angeles area. So that's dideri. Now on the shadier side of my greenhouse, this is Cattleya Seabreeze Blue Ribbon. This is one of the orchids that I bought from a Hawaiian grower a number of years ago, and boy, it struggled, and I really shouldn't be growing this orchid. It's the cerulean type, so the bluish cast, which tend to be, at least from my experience, a little less vigorous than the standard color forms of the Cattleyas, but it likes lighter conditions, shadier conditions, I should say, and also warmer temperatures in the winter than I can provide. And again, I found I have to be careful obtaining orchids from Hawaiian growers because their climate is so much more mild than mine is in the wintertime. And this one probably should have gone to an auction at our Five Cities Orchid Society to give it an opportunity to grow where someone has a little warmer conditions in the wintertime. And then in the corner, which does get some morning sun, as you can see, to show you very briefly, this is Oncidium Cherry Baby, and it's got multiple spikes. It's in a net pot with hydroton, so it doesn't have to be repotted very frequently, but just a fantastic fragrance, again, chocolatey, coconutty fragrance. Multiple bloom spikes, and a very easy orchid to grow, so Oncidium Cherry Baby is definitely a recommendation if you're new to orchid growing and want to try an Oncidium with great form, vigorous grower, and fantastic fragrance. And I'm just going to move along this side, again, the unnamed Oncidium that's blooming like crazy with 2.5 foot spikes. And then on the other side, this is another Sunset Valley Orchids semi-compact Cattleya, but the color on this is just spectacular. And let me pull a little tag so you can see what this is. And this has turned into a really nice specimen plant. This is Potneria. Now let's try to Paradise Rose and Lebencre's Diamond Orchids. So again, Sunset Valley Orchids, compact Cattleya. I did spray with neem oil quite a bit last year in order to control scale, and I think some of the discoloration on the leaves may have been sensitivity to neem oil, particularly when sprayed in the warmer summer months. Switching now to my peppermint soap solution, I'm getting good control of scale, and I'm seeing less discoloration on the leaves. So that may be my recommended route going forward in not using neem oil, but using the peppermint soap solution a little more frequently. Okay, that's pretty much it for the second week in June. And I've mentioned as my orchid collection grows, I'm focusing more and more on mini orchids because they just take up less space. And this is commonly called the centipede orchid. And for obvious reasons, the way the new growths develop, and I'll give you just a little example of the scale of this. It's fairly small, but has these very delicate pink flowers. And there we go. but just a nice little miniature. And again, this is the brighter side of my greenhouse facing east, and this is a Sunset Valley Orchids, one of their newer introductions. I'll show you, this is Poneria Loud 9 and Higher Multiplier. But what's nice about these compact and mini Cattleyas is they bloom multiple times a year. So this will have flowers probably 2 or 3 times a year. As the plant matures, there'll be more and more spikes that come up on new growths. But just a really fun little mini and compact Cattleya to grow. And the fact that they send out multiple leads means they develop into specimen plants quite quickly. And then I'll just move down a little bit. This is a Dendrobium formosanum. And you can see the flower spikes are just opening up. And that's going to be a pretty spectacular flower that I'll show you in about 2 weeks. But great location. This is one of the dendrobiums that does not require a dry winter rest, so it gets watered throughout the winter, a little less in cooler weather, but not a distinct dry winter rest. And the Maxillaria tenuifolia is really pumping out just a very large amount of chocolate fragrance. So when you walk into the greenhouse now with this plant with so many flowers in bloom, you're really, in the afternoon, warmer afternoons, you get a strong sense of chocolate as soon as you come into the greenhouse. And I mentioned there's an alba form of this, which I obtained from Tim Culbertson last year, and it is now in full bloom. So I'll show you what that looks like. And so this still has the chocolate scent, but it's a little mutation where the dark red pigment is missing. And so this is Maxillaria tenuifolia alba. And a pretty nice flower. And it's a nice contrast to the standard color form. And then one of my Oncidiums is now blooming. This is Oncidium flexuosum. Also, the Oncidiums are known as dancing ladies. And this will be a pretty nice display. And let's just take a quick look at the tag on this so you know what we're dealing with. And there we go, Oncidium flexuosum. And another dendrobium requiring a dry winter rest. This is Dendrobium binsone. And you can see 2 spikes. And it's got a very interesting, almost 2 eye spot patterns in the throat. But a real pretty orchid, and this, again, will bloom for 1 to 2 weeks. But it comes from northern India, the Himalayas. A lot of fertilizer and water in the summertime, because in the monsoon areas, they can get 30 or more inches of rain in a single month, June, July, August, and then dry winter rest starting at Thanksgiving. Bright conditions, and just an occasional misting to keep the canes from shriveling. So that's Dendrobium binsone. And here's a good example of how orchid growing can always teach you a lesson and keep you humble. Just when you think you're doing really well, and I was really happy with this division that bloomed this year, the first year that I've had this plant. And this is Marcophila tubensis kiana. This is the orchid that is commensal with ants and has the hollow pseudobulbs where ants tend to colonize. And I thought I was doing a really good job with it, and I just rotated the plant a little bit, and lo and behold, we have scale. So I'll show you how I take care of this in just a second. I'm going to take my pump sprayer with my peppermint soap mixture and spray, getting the underside of the leaves pretty thoroughly, as much as I can. And then we'll take our trusty toothbrush and do a little bit of scrubbing. And so I'll work this until I remove all of the scale, and hopefully we'll get this under control. But great use of a toothbrush, peppermint soap, and a little elbow grease to try to eradicate scale. And just a little teaser for next month, this is Laelia pacova, and it's a tenebrosa, Laelia tenebrosa hybrid. And I heard an interesting comment at our orchid show this weekend. Someone told me the reason we hold these orchid shows and do these orchid displays is to remind ourselves how badly we grow orchids and how much better everyone else is. And I'm really proud, or was proud of the fact before the orchid show that I've got 2 sheaths, and you can see the buds just developing. So at the end of next month, you'll get to see what Laelia pacova looks like. But being a tenebrosa hybrid, one of our really superior growers, members of our 5 Cities Orchid Society, Eric, displayed his tenebrosa at the show. And while we all thought we're doing a great job with this orchid, Eric won Best of Show. So I will put in a photograph of what his plant looks like compared to mine. And you'll see how humbling an experience the orchid show was. And I guess the message here is you can always find someone who's a little bit taller, a little bit thinner, a little bit better looking. But if you just get up every day and enjoy life and enjoy your orchids, no matter how much someone else can grow them a little bit better, you can just enjoy what you've got. And a few more flowers are now open on my Lycaste aromatica hybrid. Give you a little better view of these flowers. But really attractive plant, blooms at a good time of year when some of my other orchids have stopped blooming. And as I mentioned, goes dormant in the wintertime, so it's not too difficult to care for in the cooler winter months. And then when you start watering it again, you get rewarded with these great flowers. And as we continue to watch Oncidium splinter develop its flower spike, we're now up to about 4 foot, maybe a little taller on this spike. And what's happening now is side branches are developing. So you can see here. And so this will increase the amount of flowers, and eventually you're going to get to see what these flowers look like, but not for a few more weeks. So we'll keep checking back as the spikes develop. And this was a nice surprise. My BLC Big Lip Fantastic from Norman's Orchids developed a second flower. Didn't see this bud developing in the back of the plant, and so it just popped open 2 days ago. And so I've got a second bloom on this plant. And always a nice surprise to see a bloom appear that you didn't see developing. And here's another dendrobium that has a very long lasting bloom. This is a hybrid Dendrobium helwigianum by Dendrobium violaceum blue. And it is mounted on a small piece of oak. Gets misted daily, spring, summer, and fall. Relatively dry winter rest, but just a really nice looking miniature dendrobium. And as I said, these blooms will last for several months, and certainly doesn't take up much room, and it's an attractive little dendrobium. And so before I show you how well I avoided temptation at our recent orchid show and sale by not buying any more orchids for my already overcrowded greenhouse, I wanted to show you Cattleya gasculania. This has 2 flower spikes. I don't believe it's got fragrance. It may develop later after the flowers mature a little bit, but just a really nice looking color combination, and blooms at a time of year when I don't have a whole lot of other orchids, especially Cattleyas, blooming. So this is Cattleya gasculania. This is one that has quite a bit of perfume. This is an Encyclia diurna, and I'll show you the tag on this, if we can focus in on it. Here we go, Encyclia diurna. And it's probably getting a little more moisture than it likes. It's in hydroton pellets and a little bit of bark. And I'll probably move this to a more porous media so that it dries out more frequently between watering. I've had this orchid for probably 15 years, and it's about time I start treating it properly and let it dry out thoroughly between watering. I've been keeping it a little too wet. And then I want to just show you in the back, this is a Brassia verrucosa, and it's got these great spidery type flowers. I've had a hard time getting my brassias to bloom, but this one sent up 4 spikes. The leaves a little bit of spotting that I'm going to try to keep it again drier in the winter, and that should cure some of the leaf spotting problems. But boy, if you like brassias and vigorously growing orchids with spidery type flowers, Brassia verrucosa is a great one. And then on my other brassia, which I'll just move over to the other side of the greenhouse and remind you, I think this is Brassia rex, but again, it came out of Trader Joe's 12 years ago and didn't have a tag, but it has these enormous brown and spotted flowers that are always a challenge to photograph because they're just so large. And it's got 3 spikes now coming, and it will bloom throughout the year. So that's a nice brassia if you're interested in brassia orchids. Okay, so it's the last day of June, and we just had a pretty fantastic weekend of our Orchid Society's annual show and sale, and I think it did a pretty good job. I vowed not to buy any new orchids because my greenhouse obviously is quite full. So I avoided temptation up until about an hour into the 2-day show. And this is Cattleya triani. And from Equigenera. It just has 3 new growths on this side, 1 on this side. So I will prune off a lot of the roots that appear dead, mount it so that it doesn't rock, secure it in probably Hydroton in a net basket, and we'll be off to the races on that guy. I really like the Dendrobium cuthersoni hybrids that will grow in warmer temperatures, and they had a number of them. So this is Equigenera's Vibe. So those will be mounted on grapevine wood that I've gotten from a local vineyard. This little dwarf or compact Cattleya was from Tim Culbertson, and it remained unsold for the entire show, and I felt sorry for it, so I bought it Sunday late afternoon, and I think that'll be a nice addition. I've got one very similar to it with, I think it's 6 bloom spikes in the greenhouse, which you may have seen the dark red rose color, and so I think it will do very nicely. And then Gloria Noggle, one of my favorite Paphiopedilum hybrids. That's the 4th one now, and I'm having a hard time getting them to bloom, so my strategy is going to be to place them in different locations in the greenhouse and see which ones do best. And what I'll do is I'll just pause here and throw in a picture of what Gloria Noggle looks like when it bloomed for me about 4 years ago. Pretty stunning Paphiopedilum. And just a little tricky to get it to bloom. And then this is an orchid that I was not familiar with until I saw a photograph of it, Ionopsis utriculoides. And it's dwarf. Got some really pretty flowers. There's 2 spikes coming. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to keep those alive to flower, but you may see those in a future video. So again, I think I did really well in avoiding temptation and only bought, about 12 orchids when I said I'd buy none. Okay, I think that's going to be it for the month of June, and we'll see you again in July.